On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
You could be worth tens of millions of dollars, but if you're living in scarcity, you don't feel abundance. The goal might be a six pack, it might be lower cholesterol, but the win is showing up at the gym and putting in the work.
It's good.
Like that's what needs to be celebrated. My business transformed because I transformed. I changed how I looked at failure and setbacks and rejection.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast, coming back to you here today with another king on the stage. This king's coming from a different part of the country, y'all. Chad Hufford, my brother. How we doing?
I'm doing great, Chaz. Thanks so much for having me.
I appreciate you getting up at the crack of dawn. It may not even be light where you are yet. Chad, tell us where you're coming from, as well as what kind of business that you got, my man.
It's not light yet, and it's not going to be light for a while. So I'm up here in Anchorage, Alaska. We've already started that trudge into winter and short days, long nights, cold and dark. And yeah, born and raised up here. So Alaska is where I call home, and started a business doing wealth management, financial planning, and really what it comes down to, Chaz, it's turned more of a coaching business, because what I realized is, giving somebody the right investment strategy and giving them the right investment tools doesn't create wealth any more than giving somebody a gym membership gives them a six pack. So it's really about behavior change. And what we try to do is just help people create a life of abundance. And there's I think faith, fitness, finances, a lot of different ways to do that. Finance is just the tool that we use. So we partnered with Dave Ramsey and some other larger organizations to help people clarify their financial path and set real meaningful goals, and then attach their current behavior to what they want to become, where they want to be in the future.
I love what you're saying here as far as behavior analysis and then also change, because that's, really anything that we want in life. I mean, in Gathering the Kings, you've kind of mentioned a few of the what we call dimensions of kingship. You've got your fitness or your health, you've got your family and marriage, you've got your business finance, spirituality, you've got lifestyle. There's just a lot of things that kind of hinge on our behavior or our habits. And so I love that you're kind of going down to the core and not just saying, "Hey, give me your money. I'll put it in an account and grow some money for you." I'm curious though. I know your background a little bit, and we'll get into it more here in a second. As far as like this is kind of how you grew up. This has been in your family for a minute, but this is something different. What you just said isn't financial planning. This is like, I'm going to make you a whole human.
Well, so I did. I grew up in a household where finances was taught and modeled, like good financial behavior. And I just thought it was normal. And then when I grew up, I realized just how frustrating and anxiety ridden finances can be, and how that has a tendency to bleed into other areas of somebody's life. Like if they're worried about their job, they're worried about paying bills, they're worried about their 401k being able to retire, they're worried about running out of money if they've already retired, that riddles the rest of their life with fear.
Yeah.
And the other thing though too is what I realized, like when people open up their financial goals and dreams to you, like we ask the questions that nobody else asks. Like, how much debt do you have? How much money do you make? How much what's your biggest financial mistake? And when people open up those parts of their lives to you, there's not much that isn't off the table.
Yeah.
And you really become a trusted part of that person's life team. It goes far beyond finances. And the other thing too is, I've seen way too many people that had great investment strategies, a great financial plan, and they just abandon it or they burn it to the ground. So we realized it's not just about giving people the right plan, the right strategies. It's about execution and making sure they continue to execute those things day after day, month after month, year after year, because this is a marathon. Building wealth and financial independence, It's not about getting rich quick. It's about building wealth slowly, but maintaining it. And we both know plenty of people that maybe got lucky in business, that made a lot of money, but they didn't have the right habits to maintain it.
Yeah.
So easy come, easy go. And we're really trying to change how that person interacts with money. So we do all the basic stuff, the financial planning, the investment management, like all the stuff that everybody else does. But we're really trying to change that person from the inside out, change their behavior, even change their relationship with money, because abundance, the experience of having an abundant life, is not something on a balance sheet. It's something that happens internally. And I meet a lot of people who are very wealthy that still live in scarcity, and they're more worried about losing their money than they are about using it. And it doesn't matter how much money you have. If you are living in a scarcity mindset, the more money you have, the more anxiety that you're going to face. So it really becomes a transformational process.
Yeah, the money becomes the tool at that point. Or if it never
Exactly.
becomes the tool, it always is the chain, right? The chain to scarcity, or really just the stressors that come with scarcity. It's all the physical and emotional and mental, just pulling down, really, is what it breaks down to. You call it depression, call it anxiety, call it frustration, whatever you wanna say from a mental health perspective, but it's tough if you're not operating in abundance. Why that word for you? Like, okay, you saw your dad or your family doing, finances and what you felt like was normal, but you found out that it's probably not normal. I'm gonna dive into that here in a second. But that's connected to abundance for you, so you're helping people with their finances, yes, but you're also helping the result.
Well, you're absolutely right, Chaz. Like, money is a tool. And if money becomes the focus, the end in itself, I've seen that become very destructive. So money should be a tool to something greater, to build a better life. And it's the tool that we help people utilize. There's other tools that should be in your toolbox to build a life of abundance. But
Yeah,
when I started my practice, it was fall of 2007. I missed the peak of the market right before we went into the financial meltdown, 2008, 2009. I got licensed about 2 weeks after the peak of the market. So the beginning of my career was pure chaos.
yeah,
And I felt like my job was to help people overcome fear, to, as you talk about, be their source of courage, be their source of persistence, keep them going, and make sure people didn't run out of money in retirement.
right.
But then as I got further into this, I realized making sure they don't run out of money is not enough. It's making sure they don't run out of purpose,
Mm,
that people have meaningful pursuit,
yeah,
that they have something that they're building with their money. And that's why I call it abundance, because you can have, you could be worth tens of millions of dollars, but if you're living in scarcity, you don't feel abundance. If you've sacrificed your health to build wealth, George Eastman's a great example. He founded Kodak, was one of the richest, most powerful guys in the world, and committed suicide, I think in his 60s or 70s, because of debilitating pain. His health had been sacrificed.
yeah,
He had a horrible spinal condition, and he had all the money in the world, but he couldn't fix his health. Or relationships, people that sacrifice their family or their friends to build wealth. They get there and they've got all this wealth, but they've got nobody to share it with.
yeah.
It's still scarcity. So I think abundance has a lot of different facets, and we try to help people maintain that, or actually oftentimes create that balance. So their money is a tool to you to live a better life, not something that drags them even deeper into that anxiety or depression that you already talked about.
Teammate, or that you're building one of your clients is building a team, a life team, and you get to be part of that team. We use some similar language in our peer-to-peer mastermind because, you're surrounding yourself with the right people. In this case, it's other business owners that are successful. That can be helpful with mindset, that can be helpful with tactics, that can be helpful with accountability around business or marriage goals or money goals, whatever that is. But in essence, you get to do the same thing, but specifically on the money side. And I loved it what you just said about 2008, 9, and 10 is people are freaking out in essence. And this is what happens with money because when you don't live in abundance, well, let me define abundance as open-handed, right? It can come easy and I'm not stressed. It can go and I'm not stressed. It's not a matter of come and go. That's not what I mean, but I understand that it's a tool and I'm not too stressed one way or the other, but when things happen dramatically like 2008 and 9, I'm sure that you got to see the worst of people, and what they wanted to do was kinda cut their own legs off and sell
Mhm.
or get their money out or, all the practicals of those bad decisions.
Well, and we haven't been in something quite like that, but I mean, the past 2 years, we've had the most prolonged stock market decline since 2008, 2009.
Right.
In 2020 with COVID, we had the most violent market crash since the Great Depression. It's been also 100 years since we've seen large companies valuations drop that quickly. And to your point, like what happens when when there's a lot of stress in somebody's life. And it doesn't even have to be a global phenomenon. It could be something, a health event, or they're getting ready to lose their job.
Yep.
The tendency is to lose sight of the long-term goal and focus on the money itself, focus on the tool itself, not what you're building, but they start hyper focusing on what it is they're building with. And it creates myopia. It creates somebody being very short sighted.
Mhm.
And what we try to do is get people back to their long-term goals. Like, okay, we're in a storm right now, but it doesn't change what you're trying to build long term.
Right.
And connecting that back to what is deeply meaningful to that individual. And that goes back to this idea of abundance. What is deeply meaningful to you, Chaz, is going to be a little bit different than me. My pursuit, what gets me up every day, what drives me, is a little different than you. But we have to get people back to what it is that they're trying to build more of or create more freedom in, beyond just the dollars, the investments, the financial strategy,
Right.
because that's not the main goal. That's a means to an end, and refocus them. What is the life that they're trying to build? Who do they want to become? Where do they want to be? What do they want to be doing? And get them past the current circumstances. Just like you talk about the mastermind with your businesses, like we have to do that a lot with business. We're pivoting in the moment, but we're maybe rerouting our course,
Right.
but it's based on a longer term destination.
Yep.
And you also mentioned accountability, and that's huge. And reminding people, here's what you said was important to you. Is that still the case? Here's the pathway that we lined out to get you there. We have to stay consistent. We have to execute. We have to stay the course.
Yeah. And that piece right there that you just said is so much easier when you got a guy on the other side that says, "Hey, wait a second. First off, you can't hit the button. Okay, I control the button because you gave me the control to the button back earlier when we set your targets, and we actually came into an agreement. So that way, when this moment came, I could be an in between you and the button of making those like short term decisions. And so here I am. I'm blocking you, and I'm reminding you potentially of how bad of a decision this could be, or realigning, as you kind of mentioned, back to what was important, because you're right, in those moments it's tough. It's tough to see beyond right here what's in front of your face, which is obviously 2008, 2009 was chaos and lack of funds and market crashing, and who knows what'll happen here in the next couple of years. There's talks on both sides, but I think the preparation of that is important. So give us just a little hindsight. Like when I think of business owners, we've kind of aligned your business helping people with finance, and my business helping business owners kind of do the same thing, set a target and then stay focused towards it. I can think of a lot of things up front that are good exercises to be able to identify what it is that we want, that purpose, and be able to kind of make some markers along the way to help us, kind of be reminded of that we're heading in the right direction. But that there's still going to be some bumps along the way. I'm going to get to your bumps here in a second, but what do you do for your clients? Maybe they're business owners, maybe they're not. It doesn't really matter, but they're trying to grow their wealth, but they're trying to do it in an abundant way, and they're sticky along the way. But what are you telling them ahead of time to kind of prepare them for that is what I'm trying to say.
Well, we have a lot of steps before they even become clients to scare them off, because we want them to know what they're up against. And I used to do this back in another life when I was training athletes, and I would let them know, like, everybody says, yeah, you're going to be stronger, you're going to be fitter, you're going to be able to jump higher, you're going to be faster and all that stuff.
Right.
But man, it's going to be painful
Yep.
in
It's
between.
gonna
Like
hurt.
it's going to hurt, because I don't want people going into this thinking like, they're only seeing the end result
Yeah.
and not being pay the price along the way. So I think getting people to a healthy view of optimism is really important, because optimism is not this Pollyanna, stick your head in the ground, everything is roses and gumdrops,
Right.
but it also isn't things always get better. And I think there's this tendency for people to believe that optimism, believe things always get better. They don't. True optimism, healthy optimism is, I believe there's a better scenario. I think things will be better in the future, but man, there's going to be a lot of trials and tribulations in between. So people want this nice staircase of life. Like every step brings them a little bit higher, a little, actually, a lot of people don't even want a staircase. They want an escalator. They just
Yeah.
want to stand there, and this thing brings them up. And we're here in Alaska. There's mountains all around us. I tell people healthy optimism is like climbing a mountain. it's jagged. Sometimes you have to cross valleys before you keep climbing. Not every step
Yeah.
brings you higher, but every
Yep.
step brings you closer to where you want to be. But there
I
will
think
be
so.
storms, there'll be crevasses, there'll be valleys along the way. Sometimes you will have to go down into a hole before you can come back up.
Yeah.
And that's true in investing, it's true in business.
Yep.
So, this idea that you are going to go through trials and difficulties and frustrations, it's a normal part of the process. But we also, again, try to attach that to what that long term goal looks like. And we ask people questions like, if you never, if you never needed a paycheck ever again, if you never had to go back to your job, what would you want your life to look like? What would you be doing now, or what would you be doing then that you're not able to do now, either
Right.
because of time or money constraints? What things would you add to your life? And what things would you take away? What things would you want to eliminate if you didn't need to go to work anymore? You didn't need to run your business.
Yeah.
But also, what are the non negotiables that are in your life right now you absolutely would not give up? And it's almost like building a house, Chaz. We're trying to get them to design what they want this thing to look like, knowing that as we build,
Yeah.
that'll change. If you've ever built a house, we did a few years ago. My wife had this great vision of what it's going to look like. She's like, we've already made these decisions. It's wonderful. It's going to be easy. We changed everything,
Yeah.
man. Like everything changed,
Yeah.
but we still had a blueprint. We still had something guiding our decisions. We still had this end goal in mind saying, this is what we want this house to look like.
Yeah.
But we also had a blueprint that attached our future goal to what we were doing in the moment. And those things evolved. And plans changed. We revised that blueprint because the long term goal shifted, and that's okay. But we always had this vision guiding us, and we had something connecting our future goal with our present actions.
Yeah, I mean, you've given it to us beautifully, so I hope the listeners pay attention. This is one of those cliche things. I had a guy on the podcast about a year ago. He said, "Look, I'm just trying to execute on the cliche, Chaz." Just like,
Hmm.
dude, if you could just execute on what Chad just gave to you of clearly identify what you want, be okay with the fact that it's going to take some work and probably a setback or two. But that doesn't have to change that you can't get it. It just means that you pivot along the way, especially in business. So this is a perfect, parlay right into what was one of those challenges for you? What was one of those moments where you had to pivot or it was a bad decision, something, a struggle that you had to overcome? Give us that trying moment for you.
Well, I'll tell you, one of the biggest things I had to overcome beyond the financial difficulties of starting a business, starting from scratch, was imposter syndrome. Feeling like I I don't belong here. What do I have to give?
Yeah.
Those doubts that a lot of business owners have. My story is a little bit different because I actually have I my background, my formal education is actually on the medical side of things. My degree is in biochemistry, and I plan to go into medicine. I was really interested in endocrinology, the study of hormones, all those interactions that go on in the body, and in surgery. And I had a lot of surgeons mentoring me. And I actually took classes here up in Anchorage, Alaska, but with professors who taught at the University of Washington Medical School. I was a few years into my practice. It's probably 2010, 2011. I was making a big shift, a big pivot that was ultimately going to build more momentum long term. But we had a rough year. Let me just put it that way. Wasn't making much money and delaying gratification in a huge way. And I bumped into this professor, and I'd taken a couple classes with him. Again, this is a medical school professor, and I bump into him. He says, "What are you doing here?" And I just kind of explained like why I was in this building at that time. He's like, "No, no, no, no. Why are you here?
Mm,
You should be in residency right now. You should have been finishing up medical school. You should be a physician. Why are you here? You're wasting your talent." And for somebody to say something like that I respected, I looked up to, and that knew that side of me, they knew the biochemistry, the medicine, the surgeon, like all those things.
yeah.
It was a huge blow. I remember going home just thinking, what if he's right? What if I'm completely off track? And I had to remind myself that that my why never changed. My why was to empower people, to encourage people to live a better life and live a better version of themselves. And if being a surgeon and fixing Humpty Dumpty was my first way of doing that, I realized finance was my second way. And I believe even better way, because I had the opportunity to change behavior and how people actually live their life, not just put them back together again, then send them back to the life that they already had and
Right.
hope they learn from whatever mistake got them into that position,
Yeah.
but actually change how they look at life, that I had even a more powerful opportunity. But in the moment, that was pretty devastating to my psyche,
Yeah.
because I started thinking about, yeah, is this really what I want? And it was almost like having the easy button there. Not that becoming a surgeon would be easy, but it was a clear path,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
I was like, it and going to medical school is kind of a nice thing to fall back on. Like, if that's your fallback strategy, it was super tempting. Like, it doesn't need to hurt this bad, Chad. That's like the voice was telling me. It doesn't need bad. You could be a doctor, you can have letters after your name, people will look up to you. Not this scumbag financial professional in the middle of this financial, because 2010, 2011, people were still super fearful.
Oh, yeah.
2000, yeah, it was still, nobody trusted anybody, especially not some biochemistry guy pretending to be a financial advisor. That's how I felt at times. So
Yeah.
that was a very, very difficult time, and I really had to dig deep to find out, really ask myself, why are you really doing this? Like, what is your purpose in this? Because, Chad, if it's just about money, there's easier ways to make money than doing this.
Yeah.
So it really forced me to be introspective, and I'm glad that I had that conversation. But it stirred up a lot of doubt inside of me.
Yeah. I think that there's, you kind of mentioned it a few minutes ago. My target here is to always transfer courage to the listeners because doubt is real. You even mentioned imposter syndrome. Some people may not know what that is, but you're positioning yourself as an expert, and it's not that you weren't an expert. You felt and then was confirmed by that guy. What are you doing here? And it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that's what you were already asking yourself that question. What am I doing here? You may not have verbalized it to yourself, but subconsciously you were wondering, gosh, is this the right decision? I don't. And he just gave you some confirmation. Unfortunately, it was on the negative side of confirmation, and so it equaled into doubt. But that same doubt is what all business owners go through, sometimes
Hmm.
daily. Am I good
Hmm.
enough? Should I be here? Like, are my people gonna leave? Is my spouse gonna leave? Like, man, it just is like a lot of weight that you carry, but yet we just kinda pack it on in the backpack and head up the mountain. What would you leave the listener right now who understands what you did, and you kinda had to dig in, dig deep? They know that they've gotta be maybe introspective, maybe they've done that work, maybe they haven't. They're touched in this moment going, "Yeah, like, this is heavy," and maybe I'm in one of those moments. What practically do I do?
So here's where biochemistry comes in. This is a little bit interesting, because as business owners, especially in the financial industry, it washes a lot of people out, right? I
That's right.
mean, running a business is difficult. Running a business is psychologically difficult. It's physically difficult. It's emotionally difficult. You don't get to clock out and go home.
Yeah.
It's still on your mind, and it can really wear people down. And what can happen is we can start creating a bad relationship with failure. And I did this very early on, because, again, 2008, 2009, 2010, I'm jumping out of the bushes at people and saying, "Hey, Chaz, I've never met you before, but somebody said I should talk to you. How would you like to turn over your entire life savings to me, an almost complete stranger, and I'll run your finances for you?"
Yeah, I'll take it from
And
here.
people are like, "No, that's crazy. And what, you have a degree in biochemistry? What?
What?
Like, this doesn't even make any sense. Get out of here, Like, you're a meathead. Pick things up, put them down. Like, just don't talk to me about my money. And so there was a lot of rejection, and I took
Yeah,
that personally, and I had to create a better relationship with failure.
good.
And what, for me, what it did is focusing on the inputs. I couldn't control if somebody was like, "Yeah, I'll talk to you," or, "Yeah, I'm interested in what you have to say." I had to create the wins differently. And the win was not whether that person made an appointment, whether they were interested in my services, whether they became a client. The win was putting myself out there and saying, "My name is Chad Hufford. I run Veritas Wealth Management. This is what we do, and I think it can help you. Are you interested?" That was a win. If they said, "Man, shut up, never talk to me again. I hope your cat dies," that was a win.
Yeah.
And I never had to talk to that person again. So
Right.
I had to measure my inputs and celebrate the inputs
That's good.
rather than just focusing on outcomes. And here's where the biochemistry was a great background for me, because in biochemistry, we ran thousands of experiments, and a lot of my research was in the lipid metabolism, like fat metabolism, that kind
Okay.
of thing.
Yeah.
And we would run these experiments, and we would go into these experiments with an idea of what we thought was going to happen, and we would plan and we would research, and there was a lot of time in preparation. But at some point, we just had to execute and run the experiments.
Right.
They usually didn't go the way we wanted them to. That's why they're called experiments. And I looked back and I was like, there's no difference between failure and an experiment, except when an experiment, you're going into the process with a willingness to learn from the
Knowing that it's probably
process
going to happen.
rather than just being attached to the outcome. So we weren't married to the outcome. We were committed to the process. And as a business owner, we need to go into these situations being willing to learn from the process, looking at it as an experiment where we don't know what the outcome's going. We have a hope. And it's not to say that we go into this willy-nilly, like making this up, like, oh, we're just gonna invest in this thing over there. We're gonna pay this guy, all this money for marketing. We're gonna try this new product that's never been tested. I'm not saying that. You prepare, you research, you put the time in, but at some point you go execute and you go into it loosely holding on to the outcome, but intensely focused on the process. What can I learn from this? And focusing on the input, not so much the outcome. If you take care of the inputs, the outcome will take care of themselves.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow. Yeah, you said this is like textbook. Just wrap it up, bottle it up. We can sell this. In all seriousness, I hope you, the listener, right now, I hope you're paying attention and you go back. You said something as far as like winning. One of my favorite quotes is "Confidence is the ultimate drug, and winning is the dealer." And everything that you just
Mm,
said is about redefining what winning is. And it's not the result,
mhm.
it's the process. And when you fall in love with the process or when you become obsessed, is what I heard you say about the process. The result eventually then becomes what you want, but that holding of the result openly is so important. I mean, there's poise there, there's maturity there. They're hearing you say it, but maybe they're like, I don't know how to do that. Any last little piece here on being able to hold it openly and focus on the inputs when you've got somebody who's maybe been so results driven their whole life? Any sort of chain breaker there that you got for us?
So obviously the results matter, right? Like people wouldn't go to the gym every day if it didn't make them fitter.
Right.
So the goal might be a six pack, it might be lower cholesterol, but the win is showing up at the gym and putting in the
It's
work.
good.
Like that's what needs to be celebrated. So when you're running a business, when you're running your life, it's knowing what's important, knowing what the outcome you're desiring looks like, but attaching an action that you have complete control over. So I can't control if I'm making a sales call. I can't even control if somebody picks up the phone, but I can control how many calls I make to a large degree.
Yep.
I can't control what happens even in I might go to the gym later today and screw up my ankle, not be able to finish, but I showed up and I executed. So it's looking at what do I want to happen? But it's probably somewhat or largely out of my control. There's maybe some luck that needs to happen. There's maybe my team members need to do some things, but what can I control that leverages that outcome? It may not be that outcome, but it's a lever. It's something that I can press on over here
Hmm.
to drive the needle over there. And I think if we measure those things and we celebrate those elements are in our control. Not only does it help you become more strategic, it also empowers you because a lot of people, a lot of business owners, they're focused on their sales and revenue. They're focused on the economy, what the hiring culture has looked like, what the employment culture looks like. It's hard to find good people right now. All those things are things that are out of our control. And it can give our agency away and it can create a prison of our own making.
Yeah.
So when we focus on the levers to our success that we have influence and nearly 100% control over, is very, very empowering. It can get us through those deep dark things. It might not even change what we do, but it changes how we look at it, and it changes our level of persistence and perseverance because we feel that, okay, I can make a difference.
Yeah.
I can be the variable to my own success. I don't have to sit here running my business hoping that my fairy godmother comes on and sprinkles some magic in and things just work themselves out and we take control of our lives.
Yeah. That ownership is important. In my morning visualization, I have a little paragraph that I'm reading. In essence, it's the same stuff that you're talking about, which is I can control the things that I control. I don't worry about the unlikely. Um, that this is being mentally strong. But the what that gives me, the sense of control that you're talking about, is I'm able to order myself. I'm able to keep myself in
Mhm,
order. And I've just found that where there is not order, there really can't be much success in really any area that we break down. And I don't mean like being super organized. I mean order. And everything I heard you just say is that there's a focus on the order or the process. And if I can boil it down to this is good and it will eventually get me what I need, and maybe I have to tweak or change some things along the way, but I focus on the thing that's going to get me there, which gives me maturity or poise or the confidence to go, okay, it's just a matter of time at this point. Like I know I'm doing the right
mhm,
stuff. It's just a matter of time. I met with someone a couple of days ago and we were talking about net worth. And I was like, look, I don't know if my net worth target is going to be achieved in my lifetime or in my children or in my grandchildren's lifetime, but it will be achieved because I know how to do it or I know the process that I'm in. I will teach my children and I will teach my grandchildren. And I hope that it goes on from there, but it will happen at some point because we're all in one here working together as a family mission and it will happen. And not that net worth is everything, that's just a little piece, but it was just a small example there of going, no, it will happen. Now, I don't know. I can't control the timeline. But I'm gonna stay pretty busy on the things that I know I can do today. So I appreciate that. I'm gonna use this opportunity to jump over to the opposite end. Something that you did that was just like, yes, you do it over and over and over again. A practical good decision that you made in the business that helped you scale or helped you get to a place where you are now that you call success.
It actually goes back to what I just talked about. There was a book I read called The Game of Numbers, and what it did is it helped me shift my focus to celebrate inputs. And I looked at business, I looked at failure differently. That was really kind of the aha moment when I realized like what I'm doing is an experiment. I'm doing another experiment.
Yep.
Every call is an experiment, and if I'm willing to learn from the process, and it being able to shift the metrics in my business and what I looked at and measure wins differently, measure success differently. And when I look back, there was a pivot point. That was an inflection point in the business. And you can see it in the numbers. And I didn't know it at the time, right? And it's kind of like what you were saying. You don't know how long it's going to take,
Yeah.
but you realize I'm on the right path now.
Yep.
And even if I'm going the right direction slowly, it's better than going any other direction at any other speed. And my business transformed
Wow.
because I transformed. I changed how I looked at failure and setbacks and rejection, all those different things.
Yeah.
And I the author is Nick Murray, and he's become a mentor to me, and that was just an absolutely huge breakthrough that started very small. And I want to remind people like do not despise the small beginnings
Yep.
because it's amazing how a small change executed persistently over time can have a huge impact in the trajectory of your life and your business. But that's where it started is was reading that book, Game of Numbers.
Love the recommendation there. We'll put that in the show notes as well. But what I'm hearing you say is that your perspective changed, and this can happen in different ways. You've actually said a couple of different ways, even just in that little phrase. The book, number one, but your willingness to read it, be open minded. Like there was a lot of things that you were before you even opened the cover, because I'm sure we've all read a book and weren't in that place of being open minded or willing to see something from a different angle, and it's just another book, but it changed you. And then I also heard you say that he's become a mentor. And so whether that's a physical relationship that you have, like an actual mentorship, but I also heard you say several minutes ago that you had a couple of doctor mentors. And that was, I know, in person because one of them talked to you. So I've heard you say a couple different things here: mentorship, reading books. Is there anything else for you that kind of fits in this category of putting ourselves in a position where we can change our perspective or grow ourselves by changing our perspective?
So let me answer that question, but backing up
Yeah.
just a little bit because even though I'm really grateful that I went through biochemistry and did that whole thing, even though there's times I'm like, was that a waste?
Yeah.
You know, but one of the things it did that was that I took and turned into a negative was there was so much reading and studying that it kind of ruined me or I let it ruin me
Mm,
for reading other
yep.
books. And when I finished that, I remember thinking there was, and I never said this out loud, but I remember there's this mindset that I kind of had that I'm done with school. I'm no longer a student.
Yeah.
And that carried me through my 20s, and some at some point in my 30s, I realized I'm running a business, I've got a family, I had 3 kids at the time, we have 6 now. I'm trying to be a better husband, better father. I have to be always learning, I have to be a lifelong long student, and I committed myself then to I'm going to be a lifelong learner. I will always be a student. I will always be growing. I will always be learning.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when podcasts started. I didn't start listening to them yet, but they started coming on.
Yeah.
You had books on let's say books on
Yeah.
tape, but
With
audio
audio.
books that dates me, books
Uh-huh.
on tape. But Chaz, there's so much out there we can learn and grow and being mentored. Like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. Like
Yeah.
there's gonna be people who are better than you at something, and it's easy as a business owner, especially as a guy. I think we get intimidated. It's hard to be around people that have so much more expertise or experience in a certain area,
Sure.
but we need that. Iron sharpens iron. We need
That's
to
right.
be around those people and to be challenged, to be stretched, because I come in contact with a lot of people that say like, "Yeah, I've got 20 years of experience." Then you get to know them, you're like, "No, you've got 1 year of experience 20 times." Because they're doing the same things, they haven't really grown. And it's like driving. A lot of us probably not a better driver today than we were 5 years ago
Yeah.
because we're doing the same routes, we're driving the same way, and we don't challenge ourselves. We don't push ourselves to a point of possibly failing. And there's a reason we don't do it because in driving, that can be the end of your life.
Yeah.
But in business, in personal growth, we have to push those limits because if we're not failing, then we're not stretching. And if we're not stretching, we're not growing. And if we're not growing, then we're just eating the same things year after year, day after day. So this is getting long-winded, Jazz, but
No, that's
just
good.
but being a lifelong learner and being exposed to people that do challenge you, that ask you those difficult questions, that put new information inside of you and in front of you, and that also are willing to share their mistakes
Yeah.
because I don't have the time to make them all myself.
Yeah. The power of, I mean, Napoleon Hill talks about the original definition of a mastermind is just that, whether it's us two here on a podcast or what we do in Gathering the Kings as an actual mastermind, it's the coming together, definiteness of
Yes.
purpose. Okay, sure, but we have to come together, and it agitates the thought process so that there's a new perspective. Um, I loved the 20-year experience or 1 year experience 20 times. I think that's the question that someone needs to ask themselves, the listener right now, you, me. I think you and me have already asked that question because we're lifelong learners. And it's like, okay, I've become the best version of myself. I've scored myself 10 on everything. Great. Now it's time to change the perspective again. There has to be that
Mhm.
notion that there's never going to be a 10. And it's not because I'm unrealistic or I'm hard on myself and I'm not being fair. And no, it's like because there's time. If I'm still awake and breathing, then there's another version of me, which is what I'm hearing you say is like, as long as you have that realization, then it's like, okay, great. It's not a matter of striving to like, oh, I gotta be this other person. It's like, no, I get to actually press in and like figure out who he is. Like I want to meet Chaz 5 years from now, right?
Yeah, and yeah, this isn't this obsession like where I can't enjoy the moment because I'm always chasing this better version of myself.
That's good.
And for me, it's an opportunity. It's an I get to improve. And I ask myself, am I in various areas of my life? I say, if this area of my life is important, am I better in this area than I was 3 years ago, 5 years ago? How am I improving? And what are the measurable inputs that I'm committing to change?
That's right.
I'm not just sitting around waiting to become better. But for me, it is an opportunity because we don't have time to get into this today, probably, but I had a horrible experience when I was 19 and should have lost my life to carbon monoxide poisoning.
Wow.
And the quick version is I went to sleep, and with carbon monoxide, you don't wake up.
No.
You fall asleep and that's it.
Bye bye.
I woke up, I got sick. I thought it was food poisoning, went back to bed, kept happening all night long. I was exposed all night long, was exposed to lethal levels of carbon monoxide.
Wow.
There's no there's no medical reason for me to be here other than God wasn't done with me.
Yeah.
And I was really angry at first because it was devastating. It was a devastating experience. But what I realized months later was I've got a new lease on life. I should have been 19 years old, standing before God, giving an account of my life with not a lot to show for it. So every day I have is a gift. And I don't call it borrowed time, I call it bonus time
Yeah.
because I have an opportunity every day to learn, to grow, and to serve in a better way, and to impact the lives of those around me. And I'm 42 now, so it's been over 22 years that I've had a gift of a new day, and viewing it that way changes my perspective on growth. It's not something I have to do; it's something I get to do,
Yeah.
and it's the pursuit. Meaningful pursuit is what's so important. It's like a dog chasing a bus. You catch the bus, you don't even know what to do with it. But the chasing of that is exhilarating because I get to
Yeah.
go out every single day and chase a better version of me.
Yeah, I love it, dude. We could talk about this for hours and hours and hours. You just mentioned though, I always like to circle in the family here. I've got 4 kids, and you've definitely went up me with the 6, and I appreciate that because fatherhood is a big deal, and 6 is a whole basketful. My question for you though is, with this pursuit of the greater Chad, this willingness to always learn and grow and obsess, really is about just all the areas. I find that balance comes up a bunch, and really balance doesn't perfectly exist ever. We create our own circumstances. And so my question for you is, obviously you've been successful in the business. You're even helping other people. Clearly you're obsessed. But how have you also been obsessed as a father or as a husband or with your fitness? Clearly you're very fit. We've talked about all the other areas of your life. How are you obsessing in all of it at the same time?
Well, a lot of those principles, the discipline, the perseverance, the commitment to service, all those things can be in all those areas. It can be in fitness, it can be in my family life, it can be in my faith, and they all tie in. And for me, one of the reasons I chose this was because of the balanced life that I was able to build.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you can't be balanced as a surgeon. There's people that do it. I know how I'm wired, and I don't believe, even to this day, I don't believe I could have been an excellent surgeon and been an excellent father and husband. I know people that have done it. Me personally, I don't know that I could have done that.
Yeah.
So I chose this profession because it allowed me to help people in a deeply meaningful way, and it was a way that I could have a business that I owned instead of a business that owned me.
Yeah.
And I have a lot of people in this profession, a lot of colleagues that still have a business that owns them. So
Absolutely.
it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You have to be super intentional to make sure your business doesn't consume you, own you. But I have 6 wonderful kids, a beautiful wife, and I am very I I am almost a zealot when it comes to protecting that time.
Yeah.
I don't do emergencies. I don't do evening calls. I used to bring my laptop home with me and work after the kids went to bed. I stopped doing that. I don't even check an email after 5 o'clock. And some days it's earlier than that. But that forces me to be even more focused and disciplined during my work hours. And I'm not saying I've got this perfect, Chaz. I'm still working on a lot of things.
Good.
I've got a lot of shortcomings, but I carve out areas for my faith my family, and my fitness every single day. Those are non-negotiable. And my business fits in between those. But I also realize that all those things help me run my business. It makes me more effective. I don't have to spend as much time in my business if I'm sharper. Just think about like if you had to cut down a forest full of trees every day,
Yep.
if you spent the first couple hours of your day sharpening your axe, the 8 hours a day that you spent cutting down trees would go by a lot. You cut down a lot more trees.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that spend 12, 14 hours a day trying to cut down trees with a dull axe. So I want to make sure that I'm showing up every day as sharp as I can, and I can get a lot more done at work in less time because those other areas. So for me, I don't see them as mutually exclusive. Like, oh, I'm spending this time with my family, I'm spending this time in the gym, I'm spending this time in my faith, and it's taking away.
Yeah.
I believe that it's an additive effect because it makes me a better human being.
Yeah, I love that perspective. We had a guy this past weekend. We did an event out in Utah, and he's new to the group, but his revelation was very similar to this right here. And we talk about business and finance, family and marriage, faith, lifestyle, and health. And his thought process was they weren't 5 dimensions. It was really 4 dimensions that gave me the lifestyle that I wanted.
Mm,
Right. And it's like, yeah, absolutely. Everything that Chad just said is the same thing. It all flows into what you want, what we call the exceptional life. And it's like, okay, well, this is what I'm after. It's not money. It's not a stage. That might be a part of that, but what I want is to be in a great marriage and for my wife to respect me and love me and actually want me to come home. Like there's a lot of work there that takes. That
mhm.
doesn't just happen. And so I just appreciate the vulnerability, number one, but then also just the summation of all these things that you're working on coming together because it really does. It's all these different pieces that you can win in every day, every week, every month, every year. Ultimately, it does give you exactly what you're looking for. So I appreciate that. I got one last question here for you, Chad. I got to know. You kind of gave us a version of this a little bit ago, but I want you to roll back the clock. I want you to tap on the shoulder of the younger Chad. Lean over and you whisper in his ear. What do you tell him?
You know the right things to do. Just do it. Don't worry about what you don't know, worry about what you can do, and execute the right things that you know to do, because all too often our knowledge outpaces our obedience. And what I mean by that is we focus on learning and preparing and things like that, which again, they're all important, but action wins, execution wins.
Yeah.
And for too long, I stood on the sidelines of my own life, waiting for the perfect time to jump in the arena, and there is no perfect time. It's always going to be muddy and bloody. It's always going to hurt. There's always going to be people that are waiting for you, even looking for you to fail. There's always going to be doubters. Always going to be haters.
Oh yeah.
But it's to execute the things we already know to do, but committing to learn the rest along the way.
Yeah, I love it. You gave, I don't know if you realized this, but you gave both sides of the coin. You said you got to spend time sharpening the axe because the
Mhm.
time that you are cutting the trees will go that much better for you. But then you gave a huge caveat and you said, but if you spend all your time sharpening the axe and never swinging at it at a tree, no trees ever get cut down.
Right.
And somewhere in the middle there is working on the axe and sharpening it, but yet cutting the tree. And guess what? At the end of a certain amount of trees, you got to sharpen again. We have this ebb and flow between knowledge and execution, which you just made an amazing point. I appreciate your clarity on that. I hope that the listener got plenty from that. I want to give them an opportunity to connect with you. One, if they are looking for that guy to jump out of the bush and say, "Hey, I can take your money and help you win with it." No, in all seriousness, clearly you've been successful in the world of finance. You help clients win not just with their money, but with all the other areas you talked about. And if they want you to do that for them, how can they find you? Or if they're an entrepreneur and they want to connect with you, how can they do that?
Well, we're on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find us in either place. Just look at Veritas Alaska. We are nationwide. I was founded here, so that's kind of the starting point. That's where I live. And website is veritasalaska.com. And if you look on any social media site, just search for Veritas Alaska, will pop up. Hi, everyone. I'm Chad Hufford, owner and founder of Veritas Wealth Management, and I want to share with you my new book, Forging Financial Freedom. It's about the lessons and mindsets necessary to build not only a life of financial independence, but of abundance.
And as a valued member of the Gathering of Kings audience, I want to extend some special offers and bonuses. So please visit forgingfinancialfreedom.com to pick up your copy of the book and some valuable bonuses.
Perfect. Well, we'll put all that in the show notes as well. Chad, it's been incredible chatting with you. I wish you nothing but blessing in your family and your business, all the folks that you're helping live an abundant life. It's a pleasure to get to know you and run with you. So we appreciate you being here, sir.
It's a privilege to be here. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.